Welcome to the Clean Power Hour Live. I'm Tim Montague, your co-host. Today is December 15th, 2022. We're wrapping up the new year, the old year. And check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. That helps others find this content because we are speeding the energy transition and we need thousands and thousands and thousands of more people to get interested and engaged. So welcome to the show, my co-host, John Weaver, commercial solar guy.
Timothy, I hope everything's going all right. I like your holiday sweater there. Wearing the same commercial solar guy shirt I wear every single day, but the holiday sweater thing, that's kind of cool. I need
some branded, I need to get a Clean Power Hour hat. That's what I really want.
I bought myself a commercial solar guy hat and it got destroyed after one summer because I bought a cheap hat and the sun and the sweat just wrecked it. And I was like, all right, don't cheap out if you buy a cool hat and you spend time outside. That's my swag.
There you go.
Limited, very
Don't
limited.
buy a cheap hat. Lessons from John Weaver.
Yeah.
So, we're still digesting the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and we're still dealing with some ups and downs in the tariff world. But, in general, the clean energy transition is happening. What I like to point out to even people in the industry is that we're 50 years really into the energy transition, even though solar really didn't take off until 2010. We've been working on clean energy for 50 years globally. And of course, the Europeans and the Japanese and the Chinese grabbed onto it a little faster than we did here because we're, I don't know, I'm not sure what's wrong with us, John, but we have very cheap fossil energy. That's one thing for sure. And I'm happy to have that fossil energy. I want to save it for a rainy day. I don't want to just guzzle it. But what's on your mind, John? And then we'll get into the news.
Oh, well, it's complex. Last week, let me double check our news, but last week, I think I wrote about a tariff story saying we had tariffs. Actually, maybe we should cover the tariff story, but
I just talked about that last week. Is there any
preliminary
news?
Okay.
It was basically, it's not a horrible situation.
Yes.
It could be a lot worse.
Yeah, correct. It could have been a lot worse. The tariff situation wasn't bad, but what I saw is that in Q2 and Q3, the United States has seen a slowdown in solar being deployed because of this tariff stuff. And maybe now people are slowing down a tiny bit because they want to slow down deploying their project for 2023 to get a new incentive or something. But, we have had some challenges with these tariffs. Even though the rulings aren't terrible against us, they're still slowing stuff down, slowing down business, slowing down continuity, and it has an effect. And so volume is still moving. Residential is setting records, man. And I actually put a screenshot in our document list showing how the price of electricity in Massachusetts is going up a whole bunch. But it's, the IRA is going to be huge and it's already starting. My list of projects that we can potentially build are starting to grow and people are happy with the extension of the incentives. They're conscious of it. So the IRA is going to do a lot. And, I got another solar panel manufacturing or solar wafer this time article that just hit the news this morning. And that's another effect of the IRA. Manufacturing is coming back. And so that's pretty sweet. A lot of neat stuff happening. Enphase is building factories, SMA, this new wafer company. So there's a lot to chew on. It's complex. It's a big world and there's no candy falling from the sky, Timothy, as we all know. So that's my reflection on the IRA.
Our friend Frank von Mierlo is in the news. I love this story about CubicPV. We interviewed Frank, who's the CEO of Cubic, back in August of 2021. You can check that out on the Continental Energy Solutions YouTube channel. And so give our listeners a little background on Cubic, and then I'll put this story It's a big story. If this is real, this is a big story, I think. What is unique about Cubic? They have a very unique approach to solar wafer technology, right?
Yeah, so Cubic was 1366, and then they were bought or combined with a company named Hunt. And I think Hunt and Cubic are trying to make um, a, a tandem solar cell, a perovskite silicon tandem solar cell. And even 1366, weren't at some point they were trying to do a thing called kerfless wafers,
Yep.
where they were like building them up from nothing. That was
Kind of like
1360.
additive manufacturing, right?
Yeah, I think that was way back in the day what 1366 was trying. And, I don't know if they're still doing it. I don't know what the status is. So, I'm not certain. I can't talk much about how their back end stuff is going. But, this is it's a challenge. Nobody has delivered perovskites. In fact, we have a perovskite announcement on the document. But nobody's delivered perovskites yet. And, my initial favorite perovskite company, who was called Oxford PV, they've just kind of disappeared. They broke up with Meyer Burger, and then they just floated away. And it's like, oh man, because I was all hot and bothered. And it was like, oh man, you guys are going to be awesome. You got machines. You're going to have some panels out in 6 months, 9 months. And man, that's awesome. And boom, disappeared. So now you can see this mono thing. So this is what the Cubic article is about. They say that they're about to open a 10 gigawatt wafer facility. Now, in it, they say monocrystalline. So I'm wondering if this mono is the standard equipment, the standard solar mono manufacturing, or if it's related in any way to their prior 1366 technology, where they were able to do some sort of kerfless. I think this is the direct manufacture, direct wafer. That's this thing they're talking about. So I'm assuming from looking at that article, the way you just scrolled through, that this is going to be standard mono wafers. Maybe they'll turn into something else cooler, though. I don't know that answer. I don't want to talk it up yet because it's way too soon.
Yeah, when you look at the Cubic website, which I just did, you see that they have 4 sections.
Yeah.
They start with mono and they go tandem. They mention perovskites. And so ultimately, I think they are planning to do a sandwich. I call it a sandwich, right? It's like peanut butter jelly bread, and thereby achieving greater efficiency overall, right? But it sounds like maybe this is a baby steps thing and they're going to just go for it with monocrystalline. And that makes sense in my mind, right? There's definitely a market for the mono technology. And 10 gigawatts is nothing to sneeze at.
No.
That's,
and we don't have wafers. We don't have a lot of wafers in the United States. So, so this would be
minimal wafers, if any, besides for PV, right? There's
so
thin
I don't
film,
think I don't think we have any wafers. But when I brought up that this might be the first wafer announcement, Kelly, the Kellys from Solar Power World gave me a link to another company that announced a wafer. But we don't have any solar wafers being manufactured in the United States, to the best of my knowledge, for standard PV. So this and that prior announcement could hypothetically, would be amongst the first. Who's Q-Cell? Q-Cell's factory that they were thinking about in Texas, the fully vertical one, that one would have wafers as well. But, this would be the beginnings of it. So this is cool. We've seen a bunch of module assembly facilities. We've seen a few or one cell facility, so a solar cell. That's NL, the European group, and this would be the second wafer. Now, neither of these wafer companies have deployed a factory ever, and this company has been taking in a lot of money from investment people for a long time. They probably got a lot of talent, but they've never actually delivered a product to the market. So you do have to grain of salt it a tiny bit. And the timing on this, press release might be a touch weird, because they say they're about to announce a location in Q1. Maybe they're putting this out there to, get their city to give them a little more incentives, some more tax credits, some better land benefits. I'm not certain, but
Yeah.
but it is cool. 10 gigs is a big number, dude. I mean, it's not biggest in China, of course. China's got 50 gig facilities, but this would be the biggest wafer facility in the United States. And from a gigawatt standpoint, it would be the biggest of a single item. So it's cool.
Yeah. I love the quote from Frank in that story. The IRA represents a titanic shift in the global solar landscape, and the U.S. is poised to become the world's most competitive location to manufacture solar. It is no accident, right, that these factories are coming. I just did an interview yesterday with a company called American Battery Factory, and they are now building a gigafactory in Tucson, Arizona, to build lithium iron phosphate battery cells. This interview will drop sometime in January. But again, it's no accident. It's all about this IRA. And onshoring manufacturing is so vital. It was probably the worst thing that America ever did, to offshore its manufacturing to Mexico and Asia. It destroyed Michigan, right? Right. Like what a wasteland Michigan has become in the Detroit area. And it's just a shame, right? So anyway, the Rust Belt is soon to be the solar PV belt, and that's a good thing. And it's a win-win. I mean, that's the thing that most consumers don't realize, John, is that when we make the clean energy transition, it's good for their pocketbooks in the long run. Consumers are going to save something like $900 to $1,000 a year by electrifying their homes, electrifying their transportation, putting solar on their roof, solar and battery. It is good for consumers in the long run. And of course, that means a lot of manufacturing, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of construction jobs. We want this economy to crank. And, it's funny, there's a lot of hype about the fusion energy announcement that was made this last week. And I was just listening to the Wall Street Journal podcast. They have a daily tech roundup. And it's really, I shrug my shoulders. It's like, and as Elon says, sure, technically humans will solve fusion. And it is clean, and I love it that there's no radioactive waste from fusion, but man, is it expensive, and it's still far, far away. And so I say, yeah, put some eggs in that basket, but let's build some damn solar, wind, and storage, because we have the technology and we know that it works. Let's move on, John. Great story. Thank you for finding that, and thank you to Kelly Pickrell at Solar Power World. We really appreciate Solar Power World.
Wait, did you see Billy? You responded to him on Twitter.
Yeah, Billy gave me the slap down, didn't he?
Yeah. Listen, I bet you and I can take them at the same time, but tall guys are really hard because they got long reach. So you got to be careful. I'm like just barely under 6 feet, but I got like a big head going for me, but it makes for a big target. So I may or may not be your best fighting partner for Billy.
Well, and as I responded, Billy said, "Hey, yo, dude, I'm 6'7". You got nothing on me. I'm only 6'4". Well, technically 6'4.25". But I don't want to be 6'7". Like, it's bad enough being 6'4". It's hard enough to find clothes that fit you. And I stand out in a crowd, but I don't want to be a head above the crowd. But
plus
anyways,
packing jeans into overhead container packages must be really hard for you when you fly places. That's probably why you drive everywhere, because your clothing is so big.
That's funny.
I strategically dress when I get onto airplanes. I make sure I wear my big clothing so I have more packing space.
Right.
So, this next one that you're clicking on, I've been watching the price of solar panels via PV Infolink. Well, Infolink Group. They've adjusted their name. And over the last few weeks, maybe a couple months, we've been seeing the price teeter-totter. And then I think this might be the first big week where we had double-digit subcomponent price drops. And so, 10% for some of the pricing in the components that make up a solar panel, which tells me that pretty soon we're going to have some cheaper panels. So the wafers, if you look at this document, the wafers for most larger products fell, a few cents per watt, and that's pretty helpful. And that probably speaks of what's coming, because if we see the wafers coming now and the biggest volumes haven't come online yet in China, we might see a little more, or we might see a decent amount more price drop in terms of solar panels and different gear. And this is the spot market, so this isn't long-term contracts that these companies have signed, but this is, what's happening right now. So the sole purpose of this is to say, guys, next year we will have some cheaper modules available, and you should already start to see it. If you're like the biggest customers, you're already seeing it, because the price of shipping is down from, $10,000, $15,000 a container, down to now $2,000 a container. So that in and of itself is worth a couple of cents per watt. Now the actual modules are going to start to come down, and it started with wafers. And, a couple of weeks ago it was polysilicon a little bit, but now it's moving to wafers. It'll come to cells next. After cells, we'll have panels. And so, I just thought that was cool. I try to look out for this report every Wednesday when it pops up. It's like 6, 7, 8 a.m. on Wednesday.
Oh, it says here, and this is, as you said, InfoLink. The title of the story is Wafer Price War Begins Amid Intensifying Upstream Negotiations. But right here, cell prices plunged by 6 to 8% this week.
Yeah,
that's a
nice.
lot. So anyway, we like cheaper solar modules in general. It makes projects pencil better.
Yep.
And
yep.
So what's not to like about that? And I don't know, anything else about this?
Not a whole lot on it. It's just that's the spot price page, and you can see the numbers more exact down below there. But it's just want to talk about pricing. We can talk about the huge volumes that are coming next, but that could be a later story. But the price is going to come down. We're going to see big time volume. These polysilicon companies, they made a lot of money over the last year or two, because from what I've learned, it was more demand driving the price up versus some fundamental price increase. The price of polysilicon didn't double or triple because of electricity. It doubled or tripled because everybody wanted to buy it, and they were able to get a little more money from it. So it's just, pricing should tighten. Pricing should soften, and that'll be nice.
Yep.
So we could talk about how people who are big into conspiracies also happen to dislike wind power a lot. Did you know that?
I did not know that. I am cautious about people who are big into conspiracies, but what's the conspiracy?
Well, the conspiracy is that wind has all kinds of issues that, like, it keeps you up late at night. So this is a story, and it's, sorry, I jumped in front of you talking about the California solar carport. We'll do that next. But the story right above is just a research thing, and it aligns. Conspiracy people have lots of conspiracies about wind farms, just in general. Wind farms can cause cancer, can make you brain tired, there's tons and tons of little things out there. Even Donald Trump, who said dumb stuff about it. So there's lots of conspiracy about wind farms. Then, secondly, the researchers found that lots of people that believe in conspiracies in general also dislike wind farms. And so the higher the probability of you being a conspiracy person, the more you probably dislike wind farms. And the more you probably believe in these weird conspiracy theories about wind farms. So I don't know. I can understand disliking being the neighbor of a wind farm if you're not getting paid any money. Totally get it. However, it's really funny when I hear some of the things people say. And so I don't know. If you see somebody talking crap about a wind farm, Tim, take a moment, think about it. Do you think they're crazy? If they're a little bit off.
I do know one crazy person in my community who dislikes wind farms because he bought some land that was slated for wind farm development, and then the wind farm got developed and he didn't like the sound and the flicker. And I can appreciate that. I don't want to live right next to a wind farm myself. But then he has gone on to try to fight solar using the same mantra, which is that solar farms make noise. And yeah, solar farms do make noise during the day when the inverters are humming, but guess what? That noise is less than the background noise of dogs and sirens and everything else going on, the wind. Yeah, that particular conspiracy holds no water, and solar doesn't make any noise at night, of course, because the sun isn't shining and the solar farm is completely silent. But anyway, it is interesting, I guess, that there's a correlation. Thank you, Nature Energy, for publishing this story. Interesting social science going on here in the energy field. And I'm just glad that I'm a solar developer, not a wind developer. Honestly, we need both. Well, we already have a lot of wind, but I'm sure it's harder to get permission to site a wind farm than it is a solar farm. Solar, as I was just talking with Joe Tassone of Encore, he came from developing cell towers to the solar industry, and you can largely hide a solar farm with just some, evergreen trees. These are low growing, pointy, and you make a fence row out of these trees and solar farm gone. Not so much with a wind farm, but
you need some big trees.
Let's talk about the price of energy. Energy prices are going up all over the United States and all over the world. And, we have been spoiled here in the Midwest with very cheap energy. I myself pay 4.5 cents. That's going to double or triple here in 2023. But you've got some spikes going on in Massachusetts. What's the story?
Yeah, so I just saw this little ad that was floating around on Twitter that was pitching me and saying, hey, look what's happening. And they quantified it. And I knew that the price was going up this fall because, I just know. And there was a really great story by WBUR. And I think they're an NPR. I give them money every month. But they did a really great story where they broke down how the increases are happening across the state. And so if you look at this document, though, the screenshot that I shared on Twitter, this is from, a solar company who was advertising, but they were breaking down the numbers, and it really surprised me. Like National Grid, the price of electricity is more than doubling. And this is just the pure electricity price, so to over 33 cents. That means people are going to be paying over 40 cents per kilowatt hour when you add in distribution and transmission, if I'm reading this right. And really got to double check these numbers, but these are big rates, and this is a big cost. So my comment when I put this image out there was that pretty soon in mass, maybe already, you won't really need an incentive, a dollar incentive to motivate installs from a price, from a investment standpoint. You just might need some policy, a strong net metering program for residential systems, which is what's in place these days. And because it's rough, electricity this expensive is going to drive a lot of people to do some behind the meter residential solar. And I just,
yes, it is.
I just saw these numbers and I was like, ooh, oh my goodness. And I'm glad I don't use a lot of electricity, but even the price of gas is going up. So, my heating bill in my apartment's all gas, so I'm going to have to deal with it. But But this is just a number that was big, and I was like, oh, it just kind of hurt when I saw that number. So I just
Yeah,
want to.
more expensive energy is good for energy professionals because more people are going to get into wind, well, solar and storage. And, but the real pain point for society is low and middle income people. Inflation is just very hard on them, right? Their paycheck is not increasing and their bills are going up. Everything is getting more expensive, gasoline, electricity, food. And so it is tough times. And I feel for those folks. And that's why we have to have carve outs for low and middle income when we develop solar legislation, which, you have in Massachusetts, you have this in New York, you have it in Illinois, in California. So that's why we need government to look out for the less advantaged of our population. Otherwise, it's winner take all, and we will have lots more losers. So should we talk about carports?
I like carports.
I love carports. They are the sexiest thing on earth, in my opinion. And parking lots are butt ugly. Let's face it. They're ugly. They're huge heat islands, right? They're just this black surface. They take up a huge amount of space. They take up 30% of urban areas. And you've done some calcs. You have a nice story in PV Magazine this week about some wonky legislation incentivizing carports, but what did you learn and what's the story in California? And oh my God, that's a beautiful picture from Vermont, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, Suncommon. It's somebody who I connected with on Twitter. I was asking for carport pictures, and oh, what a wonderful little setup they have there. So in California, it's just a very early piece of legislation. There's nothing attached to it. It simply says it is the intent to provide incentives for solar canopies over parking lots via tax credit. And the goal is to make these parking lots in downtown areas so that we can minimize land use in rural areas and the transmission, so that we can keep farming and make better use of our land. And the senator, he put out a press release, Senator Becker. He said in his press release, he said that pavement makes 35 to 50% of the total surface areas in cities, and 40% of that pavement is parking lots. It's like, oh, that's disgusting. So it's like 20% of the city of LA is parking lots. And below that, he says it. He goes, LA County has 101 square miles of parking lots. Yeah. So that's the motivation, is to, he's pushing on a tax credit. And again, there was a very limited amount of data, like literally in the article, there's one sentence, and that's what the whole of the legislation is as of yet. So it's very early. It's to be discussed. But I just, if California does a tax credit and the world follows California, that's great, because, I did some rough math at the top, and I've seen this math out there, so I was just repeating it. But if a single parking spot is 144 square feet, you can fit 2.5 to 3 kW. You can generate almost 50% of the United States' electricity with 25% of its parking spots. So just parking lots. Mm. No, let's be extreme. This is not a real thing.
If we solarized every parking spot, we could completely green the grid just with parking lot solar, right?
I was just going to say that and say I didn't want to get too fantastical because, but yes, we could do half of the parking lots and be at like 90% is really what it's saying. Just parking lots. That doesn't include rooftops, doesn't include wind. This is just solar parking lots.
Yeah.
We could do 90%. And remember,
the reason we haven't done this is because carports are relatively expensive.
Yes.
I love them, but they are expensive, and everyone wants a carport until they get the pricing on it. And so that's where roof or traditional ground mount solar is still more competitive. But Oh, the other thing I should say is the aesthetics. I think they're wonderful. They provide shade for the car, so your car doesn't get baking hot in the summer. And then you can see that you're actually greening the grid too. I love it. You know, rooftop solar for industrial solar, you don't see it. It's 30 feet in the air on a flat roof. You don't even know it's there. But what were you going to say?
I don't know. Carports are expensive. You know, the steel costs a lot of money. The labor costs are higher. And then there's generally some expensive trenching as well. The legislation can be challenging because, you know, a carport, a lot of times you just have open parking lots that aren't even associated with the building, and the carport and the parking lot and the building are separate. And then, and I don't know this because I'm not in the parking lot business, but I assume that a lot of parking lot people believe that they have a real estate investment that could turn into a structure. And if you build a 25, 35-year carport, you're suddenly limiting what you can do with your piece of land. And I assume, I don't know, but I just assume that was part of the equation that might slow down carport installations. But they're hard to do. They're hard. They're heavy. There's a lot of steel, a lot of labor, you know, extra 75 cents, extra $1 with the price of steel these days. It's rough. But I like carports. Massachusetts offers 6 cents per kilowatt hour for 20 years if you do a carport on top of whatever incentive they have. So that's not bad. That's good. And that covers cost of the carport over the years. As long as it's a big enough system, 250.
Pretty generous incentive.
Yes, it is. Yep. So carports getting built.
Special incentive for carports yet in Illinois. I look forward to that day. And but this is why we need carve outs for carports. It's a huge wasted resource today. And honestly, when the robotaxi does come, then we're going to need a lot fewer cars, and you just got this huge wasted space. And so putting batteries and solar arrays on those parking lots is going to be a great thing. And we can actually power huge amounts of our infrastructure with that real estate. We won't have to repurpose it as something totally different. Just put some solar and batteries on it. And I mean, you could have a dual use then, right? You could have some other activity going on underneath, but there's not going to be cars. We're going to have a lot fewer cars. It's going to take a while, and Elon's got to truly get the robo going. Stop fussing with Twitter, Elon, and get the robo going. Okay, come on.
Oh yeah,
you're such a slacker.
Yeah, let's focus, buddy. Focus. Build some weird things. That's what the world needs from you. That's what the world needs. All right. What are we talking about next? All kinds of stuff out there, Tim. Every single day.
Meyer Burger.
Our favorite.
Yes,
my favorite.
Our favorite solar company, no doubt. Meyer Burger in partnership to develop perovskite tandem technology targeting industrial scale. You know, I'm so curious about perovskites. I've heard that one of the challenges is making them more durable, right?
Yes.
The stuff wants to fall apart more easily than crystalline PV.
Yep.
I don't understand that material science. That's one of the problems. It also is classically dependent on lead, which I'm not crazy about because lead is toxic and I don't want a lot of lead floating around in the environment. I don't know, if they're transcending this, but it is interesting that Meyer Burger is going after perovskites. That tells me that there's something there. There is a there.
So Meyer Burger was a partner with the other group, Oxford PV, and then Oxford PV dumped them.
Mysteriously disappearing solar company, Oxford PV.
Yeah. And I was huge. I was all hot and bothered. They were awesome. That's twice I've said that this show. But they were like, it's all about perovskites. You can see the technology that makes me go sweet. But they just disappeared. And somebody hinted online that when they backed out of the deal with Meyer Burger, that limited their ability to get finance. And so now they're having challenges getting finance going forward. And so I get it. I get why that happens. They dropped Meyer Burger, who's a really smart company. But I'm really happy to see. So this Helmholtz Zentrum Berlin Group, HZB, they are right now the leaders, I think, in putting out the most efficient perovskite silicon tandem cell. And they're on the top of the NREL list. So they're like not well over, they're like 31%. So they're over 30% from their cell. And, they're working on it. And so I'm just happy to see these specific companies have come together, because it's just neat. We're hoping to see, the next technology, because this can take modules over 30%. And again, it's far in the future, and everything you said is correct. Perovskites in general right now break down a lot. However, I have seen research suggesting that we're working through those challenges. As well, I do think perovskites have lead in them, but we do mostly seal our solar panels really well. And so that lead, just like,
Well,
the
when
other
panel gets repurposed though, right? It's going to get ground up and the dust is going to fly around. And anyway,
Yeah. So it's something that has to be accounted for. If the lead amounts are small enough, I don't know exactly how it works though. How much lead and whether it's a lead that can get into the environment, because there's some structuring of materials where everything is locked and bound together. So it's like, for instance, one time I read that if a first solar panel was hit by a tornado, it would not damage the panel to the point where the cadmium would get into the market. And they literally were hit by a tornado. And so that's how they have this data. They had a tornado roll over one of their power plants in the desert and, just destroyed a bunch of crap, got all fixed, but, caused some issues.
And these HZB guys have a sense of humor. They have a consortium called the Pepperoni Consortium. Co-funded by the EU under Horizon Europe and its long-term funding program for R&I and the Swiss Secretariat for Education, blah, blah, blah.
We should look up what that means.
Q Cells is part of the deal. Obviously, major solar panel maker from South Korea. And they're making panels in the US, in Georgia, expanding that facility. And they're also a developer. I'm so curious about this, how solar panel technology companies, they vertically integrate like First Solar did. They become developers and asset owners, and then they de-integrate, not disintegrate, but de-integrate, and they spin off. So First Solar's back to just being a solar panel company. Meanwhile, Q Cells is now a full cycle, everything, including asset ownership, I think. I get it from a money-making perspective. I just don't know if that works as a business when you have so many different business lines. But anyway, good stuff.
Well, Q Cell is owned by Hanwha. Hanwha is a global conglomerate that owns a million different companies. Yeah. So when we talk about Q Cell, I think we even may have chatted about it last week in an article I covered, but
we talk about Q Cells a lot. They make really nice solar panels for one thing.
Yeah. Well, they have a project that they were owning, I believe, and we discovered the project was owned by 174 Energy, and Energy was a subsidiary, or 174 was a subsidiary of something else, and then the next one was a subsidiary of the Q Cell Energy Group, and the Q Cell Energy Group was owned by the Hanwha conglomerate. So it's just, for Q Cell, they have 1,000 different businesses that they and their family are in. And so I think it's, they're going to do a lot in solar and batteries, solar control systems. They're just all over it. And hopefully they build this 9 gigawatt fully vertically integrated facility that could be somewhere in the United States. We talked about it on the show, but they are looking at Texas, Georgia, Alabama, different regions in the South, Southeast for a big facility.
You're talking about Q Cells?
Q Cell.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, they have a facility in Georgia that's like 1.8 gigawatts of panel assembly, and I think they're expanding it to maybe over 2. Maybe it's a new site, maybe it's the same site, and then they have a totally separate site that they are exploring and trying to put together. And that's the Texas facility that was 9 gigs, the vertically integrated one. That could also be other places. It could be in other states in the Southeast, from what I read. So lots of people were chasing Q-Cell for that facility. It's a lot of jobs.
Yep. All right, let's talk about hydrogen. We haven't talked about hydrogen lately. So glad you found a story in Power Technology. Air Products and AES to build $4 billion hydrogen facility in Texas. Project includes 1.4 gigawatts of wind and solar power capacity.
Yep.
I am a fan of hydrogen as long as it's green. All the other colors I really could give it a rat's butt about.
What about the pink? The pink hydrogen comes from nuclear.
Yeah, nuclear is okay. If it's an existing facility, fine. But anyway, wind and solar is the way to go, right? Take water, wind and solar, and bada bing, bada boom, oxygen and hydrogen out the back end. And then you can fuel many aspects of industry that you want, right? You could make steel. You can do any kind of heating process that you really want to. Hydrogen burns hotter than methane or natural gas. So lots of possibilities with hydrogen. It's hard to transport. You have to have special pipes for it because it's such a small molecule. It likes to get into the nooks and crannies and make your pipes brittle, and it leaks. So anyway, but it's going to be a thing. It's already a thing. Like, that's the thing, is we don't even realize it, but there is a hydrogen economy. It's just in select places. And unless you're into applications that require hydrogen, which I'm not familiar with what are all the applications, but there already is. So we already have a black and gray and blue hydrogen economy. Now we just need a green hydrogen economy, right? But what's going on in Texas?
It's what you said at the beginning. It's a company who is going to build 1.4 gigs of wind and solar, and they're going to make 200. Is it 200 tons a day, or is it? I think it's 200 tons a day of hydrogen.
Yeah.
And it's going to have 115 permanent jobs, which I thought was neat. I'm wondering, because for the solar, maybe it's like 10 people, but the hydrogen, maybe it's another 100. I'm interested in learning the numbers and starting to see these relationships. The hydrogen, they're going to sell it in a long-term contract to the other company. So AES. So under the 30-year agreement, Air Products will Air Products will purchase the hydrogen and market it somewhere. And AES is just going to be the developer of the solar and the hydrogen project. And what's cool is that all this gear will get 30%, 40% tax credits, probably at least 40, because Texas is full of energy communities. And then they're going to get tax credits for the hydrogen being green. So they're going to get 2 tax credits. They're going to get tax credit, I believe, for the electrolysis hardware. I believe they'll get a tax credit for I know they'll get it for the solar and the wind. And then they'll get a certain amount, up to $3 a kilogram, for the hydrogen that's green. And so they're going to have a whole bunch. I'm really, I think that hydrogen has a strong chance. I'm wondering if I'm being manipulated by the big world because there's so much marketing out there and I know so little about hydrogen. And I know that the fossils are pushing hydrogen hard because they want to make use of their infrastructure. They want to use gas as a bridge fuel.
Right. You think about methane, right? It's carbon and 4 hydrogen atoms, right? So there's a lot of hydrogen in methane, and you can just add energy to that and break that apart. And that's what the fossil fuel companies want to do, because they're in the methane business. And that's a problem because it fuels the fossil fuel industry, basically. And we need to just put that industry on ice, calm it down, keep the stuff in the ground. If you get it out of the ground, you're going to use it. And methane leaking is a huge problem, right? Most people are completely ignorant of how big a problem methane leaks are. It's a much more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. I think by a factor of 1,000 or something crazy. It's a much more potent greenhouse gas. And
By a big number, yeah.
And so while methane is very useful, we want to just keep it in the ground and move to green hydrogen. And we don't need as much gas, period. We can use just electricity for a lot of processes, as Rondo Energy is demonstrating. Check out Rondo Energy. I've had a slew of thermal energy companies on the show, but I really like Rondo. They're just making hot bricks. So it's a hot brick battery making the heat with electric resistance, like what you have in your toaster. It's very tried and true. It's very old, established, efficient technology. But green hydrogen coming to Texas, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. What did it say? 1,500 jobs, 1,300 construction jobs. It's a big project, 1.4 gigawatts of solar and wind. And AES knows how to do that. So it seems like a good, I've never heard of this air company though. Who are they?
Me neither. Nope. That was a new one for me too.
Air Products.
Yep.
Air Products and Chemicals Inc. is a provider of industrial gases. Okay. They're into all kinds of industrial gases. Makes sense. Got to know how to handle gas if you're going to handle hydrogen.
That's, I feel like my company should at least try some hydrogen to gain some knowledge and not be left behind. But I'm like, where do you start? I mean, how do you manage getting the liquid fuel away from your facility? How do you store it during the daytime? And, it's just it's a whole new set of world to learn about that absolutely overwhelms me with everything else going on. But sounds like 1,000 people are going to do it and make boatloads of money off of it. So making use of these incentives, some people are going to get some amazing, amazing project returns on investment that are just goofy and good for them.
Yep.
So hydrogen's coming in a big way. This is a big volume. I hope it gets built, and good luck. Good luck, all you folks. Do some hydrogen.
So you've got a story about charging infrastructure. Let's talk about that. The thing that I've learned recently, I mentioned American Battery Factory, Paul Charles, and that interview is going to drop in January. But we need 6 terawatts of storage by his calculations, and that is a lot of batteries. But what is this? It's an infographic.
Yep.
From ATRI Charging. ATI, American Transportation Research Institute. Okay, ATRI. Never heard of them.
I like the picture on the second page. And, there's other good information. The map, yes. And the map breaks down the percentage of electricity from that state that'll be necessary to fully electrify transportation. It also breaks out the 2 different types. So it says 26.3% of electricity to power passenger cars and trucks, 14% for all freight trucks, including 10.6% for long haul. So that's the first time I saw it broken out that way. 26 for residential.
These percentages are the percent of the grid power needed to electrify transportation?
Just pure kWhs.
Yeah. And it varies. It looks like it varies between 30% and 60%, basically. It's much higher in California for some reason, 57% in California or 60% in Maine.
Yeah.
I don't know why would it be so high in some states? I mean, it varies by
drivers
too.
They're driving a lot. People in Maine drive long distances. People in California drive all the time. It's just what they do. So that's my assumption.
Just what they do.
Yeah, California. California car culture, man. They love cars in Cali. So that's what I assume. I mean, I'm no expert, of course. Well, a little bit expert. But I assume it's because, California has just a lot of cars and people like to drive, and they drive huge distances and from the country into the city. And it's a bit much.
Yeah.
I ride my bike.
So this is why we need to double the grid though, right? 40% overall of our electricity is going to go to electrification overall. And so that's electricity that's not being consumed today, right? It's being driven by fossil fuels. And,
correct.
And the good news is we have plenty of wind and solar and soon batteries. We have to make a lot more batteries.
Yep.
And American Battery Factory building a gigafactory in Tucson, Arizona to compete with Tesla, basically, right? Tesla is
awesome.
Probably the biggest in collaboration with Panasonic.
Yeah, and that chart, when you look at it, it's specifically focused on transportation. It doesn't include heating. And if we electrify heating up in the north, we need to like double and triple the grid. We're gonna have to learn some serious stuff to electrify heating in the Northeast. It's gonna be, or in the north, just the north in general. It's gonna be expensive and challenging.
I mean, heat pumps and resistant heat, that combination does work. Yeah, your audio got funky there, John. I don't know what happened, but maybe your earbud. Now you're muted.
Oh, yeah, my speakers suddenly stopped working and I couldn't hear you, Tim. Sorry about that. The computer told me, so fixed.
You're cool.
Yes.
It sounds better now.
Good.
Well, we're wrapping up the show. Truck charging availability will be the truck parking crisis 2.0. It says here, using today's truck and charging requirements, more chargers will be needed than there are parking spaces. Yeah, I could see that, right? When you go to a truck stop, the trucks are all parked right next to each other, right, in these rows, and you're going to need to add a lot of space there to put these mega chargers. So it's a thing. Luckily, we have lots of real estate. We're swimming in real estate. We just got to integrate the chargers and the batteries.
I saw an interesting post on LinkedIn, and it was from a truck company, an electric truck company. And I think I just found the tweet. And so what they did, so the group is called Forum Mobility, and they did a ribbon cutting with what they said was their first customer. And it's a deal to provide 5 Class 8 battery electric trucks. I think Class 8 is the biggest size, 4 fast chargers, and the electricity. And they're specifically using it for dryage. And I think what dryage is where you move the shipping containers from the port to local storage before they go on the long trip. And so this company, they do dryage. They move the product from the port to the local factories, and they just bought 5 Class 8 battery trucks. And the key is they got the chargers and the electricity in the deal. And that's what I thought was interesting. They didn't just do a truck. They didn't say, okay, here's your truck. They did a truck plus chargers and the electricity. So there was a deeper game that was going on, that somebody said, this is how we have to do this to make the transaction work. And I was like, huh, that's interesting to see. So I hope Tesla does really well with their truck, and I hope every other big trucking company fights to keep their money and does really well with their trucks. I saw somebody complaining about the Tesla truck and some of the nuances of it, and talking about, and then he was talking about how all these other trucks were great. And I was like, you know what? Wonderful. We have truck building competition. Right. And he was pointing out EV trucks. And I'm like, you know what? This is great. Everybody's arguing. I love it. So you guys keep fighting. I'll make sure we review the negative feedback on the structure of the Tesla truck, so we can get some, maybe some trucking people who have a big EV truck, and we can talk about that. So that would be cool.
Yeah, that's the electric semis are coming. Volvo is making one. We talked about this either last week or the week before. There's a handful of makers. Tesla wasn't the first to market. But let's wrap up. Let's talk about your project. I think this is your project in rural Massachusetts, if I remember correctly, right?
Yep. I wouldn't call it rural. It's Dartmouth, which is South Coast. So we're not rural. We do have some space down here, some farmland, and it's a little less. It's not the city. Definitely not the city. But this is a nice project. We're about to close it up. We're having some challenges getting key components, Tim. If you want to help me this week, you can help me get some disconnects. And so this is country gravel here, and we're deploying that. Just finishing up our road. We got our fence mostly up. I think the fence is done by now. We have we got through another inspection, and it was just nice to get that road in because you got to have something there. The site, we can't do anything on the ground, so we're just gonna have to like hack at the plants, but we can't do anything on the ground till the spring because it's a little too cold to plant stuff, and we didn't get a good chance to do anything on the soil, but it's just nice to finish up the road. I think if you do one of the pictures, you can see the mat we put down, the black material. Yeah, we were doing some edging. Yeah, so first you put down some
goes down before the gravel. Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe the order is that first you put down soil, you compact the soil, then you put down the fabric, then you put down the gravel. I think that's the order of the different layers. But I'm not on the field, and Benji, he's our civil engineer. He actually knows. Benji actually builds real roads versus just gravel roads. So he knows a lot about it.
And is the tilt, do you know, is this a 25-degree or 30-degree tilt? It looks like 25 to me, but I'm just guessing.
It's definitely not 30. It's definitely not 30. It's probably closer to 20, 25. Yeah.
Yeah. The advantage of 25 is you can put more rows, right? Less row space. And you get a little less production in the winter, of course, but there's little nuances like this when you're designing. This is about a half a meg, right?
216 kW DC. Okay. So a quarter of a meg. Yes.
And it was a front of the meter, if I recall, right?
This is a standalone that has a 20-year fixed contract to sell its electricity to the utility.
Yeah.
So it'll do all right. This is a common installation type in Massachusetts because of our legislation structure. So it's a nice little install. It's cool. I like it. It's almost done. Really having an issue with our disconnect, Tim. They were delayed 2 or 3 times, and then now our component is on the no date list. So, and that's really bad. Disconnect, we should have a lot sooner. So I don't know. I got to figure out how to find some disconnects. So that's where my help is needed today, Timothy.
Yeah, supply chain issues. I was saying to Joe Tassone, I've never said that word so much, that expression, supply chain. But so, Mr. Weaver, how can our listeners find you? I'm going to put your website on screen at other ways. Commercialsolarguy.com.
Commercialsolarguy.com. That is our place. We contact us page. I got a little goofy video of me there from 5 years ago now. It's been up there for a while.
Yeah, you need to update that video.
Yeah, but it's a funny video. And at the end of the video, I say, I like big roofs, and I cannot lie. And everybody laughs. So I kind of like the video. But yeah, I should update it.
It is true. I like big roofs too. I like big roofs with big loads.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, you can also find John on Twitter or Mastodon. Have you decided if you like Mastodon?
I haven't really tested it. I don't have the energy right now to add a new social media thing to my existence.
I know, right? Who has time for yet another platform?
Yeah, we'll see.
Christian Roseland jumped ship. I saw that. So that was interesting, but who knows? Well, you can find me at cleanpowerhour.com. You can find all our interviews and all of our news roundups here, right? You see my interview here with Jing Tian from Tygo. They make power electronics for rapid shutdown. We post our lives that we record here every week, every Thursday, coming to you live at noon Eastern, 11 Central, 10 Mountain, and 9 Pacific. But just so many topics like increasing equity, diversity, and justice with Shalaya Morissette from the US DOE. Behind the meter wind. Really enjoyed talking to Jeremy Kent at One Energy. And every week we're bringing you one of these CEO interviews with clean energy companies and this news roundup. So check it out. Give us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and reach out to us. We love to hear from our listeners. We need your input on what topics you want to hear from and what companies you think we should cover, because it's a big world and there's a lot going on. So with that, I'll say thank you, John. Have a great day, and let's